Okay.
Okay. All right, guys. Welcome back to another fun-filled year. Um, it kind of seems like 2023 dealt a lot of people with a lot of issues, us included this year. Some of you guys were down with the tornado, and um, it's just farming. I mean, the old adage is if it would be easy, everybody would do it. And that's what makes us farmers the to my opinion the greatest workforce in the world. I mean, we get adversity thrown at us every year, and we just I don't know if it's brains or what, but or stupidity, stubbornness, but we just keep coming back for more and more. And I think eventually the world will understand that we they do kind of need us a little bit. But we probably did more testing this year on our farm with corn, soybeans, and what we ever did. Now the problem is a lot of it got skewed with the between the tornado and the straight line winds, but we do still have some pretty good information. Um, the one that really irks me off, we had a plot in a river bottom where we did 43 different trials of basically every company that I see on Twitter. I grab their program or their products and try. And, that was probably the biggest hit that pissed me off this year is the straight line winds kind of screwed all that up. So we didn't get basically any information out of that. But we do have a few plots that we did on the farm, not counting just the MACC plots. I don't know if you guys seen all the MACC plots, what we did. Um, wasn't a whole lot of difference. The biggest difference was where we didn't run the 2x2. I think there was a 40 plus bushel difference, and the wife kind of come in last night, I think, and threw all my papers away. I had to clean it up, getting ready for a Christmas party. But I do have my other plots that I got tissue samples. I did do some foliar feeding this year. I do have some interesting information. I didn't foliar feed on soybeans, but I did on corn. Joe, are we wanting to get into that, or are we wanting to go to the other stuff first? We can get into that stuff after lunch. Our test plots, I
Yeah.
guess. We'll go ahead and do this here. Um, it's kind of the same stuff. We do a little bit of talking. We iterate this extremely much. Um, first thing we got to do, guys, is get our pHs. I still see guys that's carrying, 6, 5.5 pHs. I really don't care what program you guys run. We got to get our pH fixed first. We got to try to be, preferably at planting, no lower than a 6, 7 in my books. That's what I want to see at the lowest of 6, 7. It makes the money that you're spending for fertility a lot more efficient. I think you're down to when you get down to 6%, if I'm thinking right, you're at about 20% that don't get to the plant, and you get down down in that 5.5, hell, you're down to about 40% of fertility in your soil that don't get into the plant. So yeah, there it is. So um, I mean, it's kind of crazy. That's where we got to spend our money first before we really dive into being efficient with our program here. Um, tiling. I'm going to talk a little bit about our farm this year. Um, here in southern Indiana, we normally are wet, wet, wet. Um, the tornado come through and straight line winds come through. We only pulled, now I'm talking about high yield, we were only able to pull one plot, um, one field that we normally pull for the last 7, 8 years. So this year we had to go in pull two different. We only turned in three contest fields, but they were two fields that that we've never, or has been a long, long time that we've been able to pull, and it's just because of they were staying wet. So between last fall and or yeah, fall of 2022 and the spring of 2023, we ended up tiling about 150 acres on 25-foot centers, and lo and behold, um, they were fields that helped us win on the NCGA this year. And I do have something very interesting too that you guys are wanting to hear. We did go out last year and rent a farm that had that we did not farm before. Had it was an organic farmer, no manure. I did not spread manure on it this spring, and we did. It was not a national winner this year, but we did cut a 341 with it. So first year farming. Um, that we've been on that farm. First time we got on it was this spring, did no manure. We'll kind of go through a little bit on the nutrient levels on that a little bit later. But so, I mean, the program does work. The manure does help, but we can achieve these kind of yields, guys, if we do things correctly. Now, the guy set the ground up pretty good. He was an organic farmer for 10 years before that. So the salt load was really extremely low. Nutrient levels were really low, and I think that's part of the reason why we were able to get the nutrients into the plant, just because we didn't have none of these nutrient antagonisms, what we're showing here. But so it can be done. We'll walk through the program that I used on that. It is a little bit different than our normal program. We did change some nutrient levels up at planting and on our first Y drop, just because knowing that we haven't farmed it for a while, kind of foreseeing what nutrient deficiencies we was probably going to have on that farm, and lo and behold, it did turn out pretty good for us. So you look at these elements in excess. The only nutrient that I really see that I 100% agree on this is, well, there's two of them. The magnesium. I'm a big advocate against lower magnesium, but the nitrogen, and I'm gonna tell you what, this year we changed things up on our farm on a couple strips just to see if we could get a yield bump by trying to raise the nitrogen level up a little bit more in the plant. At my first Y drop, I ran the same load of my normal Y drop of the strips beside it. The only thing I did, I ran another 20 gallon of 32, and across the whole board from V6 on, every nutrient in that strip stayed below what our strip beside where we were staying at our normal Y drop pass. So what I'm saying is the nitrogen just did not affect the potassium and the calcium. It affected every other nutrient in the plant on our tissue samples as far as getting into the plant. And the big kicker was it ended up being about 25 bushel less than where we stayed with the normal program. So, just once again, we're reiterating, maybe some of the guys, maybe we're still putting too much nitrogen down. We think we found the bottom line where we can't go any lower on our farm. We had some strips out there where we dropped down to 140 pounds. We definitely did not have quite the top end yield as what we were running when we were running 160 and 180 pounds. So, on our farm, our minimum being Y dropped and put in with the planter a 2x2. On our farm, 140, I can't really go below 140 pounds, or we start taking a pretty good hit on the yield from the nitrogen being too less. So our sweet spot's going to be in that, probably that 150 to 180 range. kind of what we're in right now. Next year at our MACC plot, we're going to visually show you guys what we're talking about when you over apply. So we're going to put out a plot um, where we're going to back to the old anage of a pound of nitrogen to grow a bushel of corn. So we're probably going to put out between 350 and a strip of 350 to 400 pounds of nitrogen to grow, 350 to 400 bushel corn in our plot, and just kind of let you guys see what happens whenever you over apply nitrogen. Because I really think on guys that are having issues, I really think that nitrogen is the big key. I think we're over applying across the board, especially if you're wide dropping, because once we get into this biology, after I was out in Phoenix last week at the Phycoterra plant with Cassidy, after talking to some of their PhDs and actually showing different, and they were all on our soil. They were introducing different loads of nitrogen into it. You could visually see our bacteria and fungi numbers going down by overloading them. Not now. I don't know if it's because they got lazy and they just quit working or what, but we could visually see the numbers on that going down. But that was kind of interesting. So guys, if you're wide dropping it and putting it down there, depending on what your yield goals are, I'm guessing you should be shooting for probably in that 0.6 to 0.7 pounds, what we're guessing, because it is 100% based on biology, and it can only run so much of whatever amount of biology that you have in your soil. If you're not doing them strips, you should be trying to do some of them strips of cutting back on nitrogen. But enough of that for now. We'll go into the fertilizers. We talk about the dry fertilizers being so rough, and once again, just look at the salt loads on all this and why it's so important to be running humics with it. Especially like I said, why we're not a fan of the dry fertilizer. 60% of muriate of potash is chloride, 47% chloride. Think about that. That's a lot of damn salt, chlorine in it on a dry fertilizer that is just tough to overcome. I hate to pick up on Roundup and all these killers, but I think Roundup's got like 4 pounds of salt per gallon in it. And why do they use salt? Because it kills. So just keep that in mind when you're applying if you're still running dry. If you're running dry yet, you definitely need to try to figure out a way to mix a dry humic with it or something to buffen the load on them salts, because it is definitely detrimental on the colonies of your bacteria in your soil. Another reason why we're a big fan of the liquid, you can see it, you put a rock out there, which dry fertilizer is a rock. So you got to have moisture to break it down and see how immobile most of these nutrients really are. So guys that are having trouble getting nutrients that are on dry fertilizer yet. Now, I'm not saying liquid is still the best. I mean, the easiest to get in the plant for guys. Or I shouldn't say easiest. It ain't easy even with liquid for some guys to get nutrients into the plant, but I'm just telling you, where you can run the fulvics with it. We're switching a little bit more to fulvics this year. I think, every load will have our 2x2. Our first wide drop will have some fulvic or humic in it, but we're going to be running more fulvic in furrow 2x2 and our first wide drop than what we did before. We're trying to drive that up, and especially with you guys with the higher soil, CEC soils, higher organic matter. the high magnesium levels. You guys probably need to be running more fulvic and humic with your mixture, just to help drive that into that plant, because it is a pain in the butt with the high CECs and high mag levels. Everybody's seen this, we show it about every year, but it is pretty true. The problem is most guys try to over apply nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And you see what them three nutrients tie up. I mean, they tie up a lot of stuff. And as you can see, for us, it don't take near the nutrient load as what everybody says, even the NP and K. But we do run a lot of boron, a lot of manganese. But calcium is a big one, and I know we're working on trying to get a good calcium product out where we can raise it during the season, other than just running gypsum or high cal lime or something like that. We got Concept Ag and Monty's working on good calcium products where we can actually apply through the Y drops to get enough down where we don't have to sit there and keep trying to foliar, a calcium product. We understand it is a problem. Poe will be on talking, I think, after dinner.
No, he's coming on right after this.
Okay, he's coming on, and the interesting thing is now Poe, I know, this is going to be his 5th year, and he's pretty well run the program to a T. And you will be utterly shocked and amazed. I mean, I was when I seen his soil samples from 5 years ago to how much they've changed, in a good way, just by running the products that we're trying to run, and and he's seeing it on his farm averages now. So we talk about boron. That's another one of my favorite nutrients that don't get talked about, or don't I know some guys are having issues getting it into the plant, but once again, you can see how important it is. Everything starts with the boron in the plant as far as pulling, getting the ball rolling as far as the sequence of nutrition going into the plant there. Do we got any questions yet? I mean, I know we're kind of rattling through this kind of quick right now.
This is your tissue calculator. Any of the guys want to use them?
Yeah, so I've not really changed much on this. The only thing that I'm looking at here, the only nutrients I would change a little bit, the manganese, I would want you guys, where I think we're seeing a benefit is the manganese. We want to see above 120. I've kind of changed that a little bit. Other than that, that's kind of our trend line for us, shooting for 300 bushel corn, 300 plus bushel corn. That's kind of the numbers that we want to try to hit there.
Hey, Kevin.
Yeah.
Would you leave iron alone then if you bump up manganese?
Yeah. I mean, I'll just flat out tell you, we cut a 425 this year on the NCGA. And on them tissue samples, I think our iron was 225 at the highest this year, and our manganese was 140.
Wow.
Through there. So I think that's, and that was 425 bushel corn. So I think for a whole nutshell, I think we would kind of just stay in that range right there. I feel pretty confident with that right there.
That's range. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So hang on a second. Go ahead, Joe.
Ready for Poe if you want him to start.
Are you there, Poe?
So he's a 50.
This might be him coming in.
He's fine.
So Poe, if you're connected, we're ready for you.
Yeah, yeah. Wait, hit me one more time.
Are you on now, Poe?
He's probably with a puppy right now.
Either that or he's killing a cat. Poe, you made connection yet?
Hold on. Trying to get here.
All right.
He's probably out trying to ride his wife's horse. Oh, should be on now.
Yeah. Well, I hear you.
You working?
I hear you. It's your video on.
Well, I've got it on.
All right.
Yep. Is it going?
I still hear you, but I don't think I see you. But
Hey,
Probably
guys.
better off.
Guys, I don't mean to butt in here on you, but Cardinal Farms had a national winner this year on the NCGA, so congrats to Brooks Cardinal. He placed third place in the irrigated, no-till irrigated.
yeah, that's awesome. Super.
Now I've got nothing.
I can hear you. Can you see the screen, Poe?
Hey, Kevin,
Yeah.
you see the Paget boys at the top on Kentucky there? They're in
Well,
first
hang on.
place.
On the national?
Yeah, Kelly Paget won national.
Oh, really?
He's a first year MACC member for you.
Holy shit!
That's great.
Wow.
Sleepers down here.
Well, good deal.
Interesting.
I just got the text set here. I'm going through them here. Hell yeah, I do see it. Hell yeah. Good deal. Good deal. Are they on? Paget boys on?
Nah, they'd have been on Monday.
Oh, Monday?
Yep.
I'm on. This is Chris.
Hey,
All right.
congratulations, buddy.
Thank you.
Job well done. Job
Thank
well
you.
done. Awesome.
We're not 425 yet, but that was pretty high for us, 337. So
You'll get it next year. I think you'll probably beat Kevin next year.
oh yeah. Give us
Man,
something
I
to shoot
hope
for.
so.
Yeah,
Man, I hope so.
yeah. I've been signing up members here in the last 10 minutes, but I was second in the nitrogen management class. So
Oh, good.
that I got a call from Linda there a while ago. So,
Damn
anyway.
it, Terry's head's gonna get bigger.
No, it's not. It's not near what you boys do. That's for sure. I think my field's shorter. Get it?
Yeah. So, all right, Poe.
All right. What about now?
We got you.
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. I had to come in the house. Wouldn't work in the shop. Okay, what we doing?
All right. So we're here at your first slide where you're going to start your testimony about where you were at before the program and then what you've done through the program. And then your first slide here is about your soybean plant.
Testimony by me. Are you sure you really want that?
Whatever.
Okay. Let's see, here's some beans. These were conventional beans planted on April 13th. This ground was pattern tiled a few years sooner, and I had time this spring to chisel plow it and work it down, kind of smooth it back out a little bit. And you can see by April 20, I had some beans coming up. 21st, May 30, you can start seeing the rows and things like that. Planted about 2.5 inches deep or so. 15-inch rows. Plant population was 80,000. You can see on May 4th there, we had a little frost. And by May 9th, we're starting to get some trifoliate, some big leaves out, things like that. Little slide there showing a tape measure, just kind of give you an idea of the spacing between the plants. Next one, on the May 14th picture, really shows the singulation. This is planted with a 15-inch row Kinsey planter with brush meters in it. So it does a pretty good job of singulating. And I think that's something that's been overlooked on beans. We've been trying to do it from corn for years, but it seems like in beans, it really pays off too. And pull up another one there, we can jabber about it. Okay, May 17th, you can see there, that's Sasha, my guard dog, and the beans. And then the next one, May 22nd, they look like they've had a little bit of distress. And the next slide on May 22nd, you can see an untreated corner right there. Those beans, everybody talks about burning beans. Those beans were sprayed with 16 ounces of clethodim, 0.62 ounce of classic, 1.5 pints of reflex, 3 ounces of 2,4-DB, and a quart of crop oil. So it's not for the timid. Everybody talks about trying to burn beans. There's the recipe to burn beans. Reflex by itself is not going to do much. Cobra, that just tickles them. That's you've got to put some wonder juice in there to really burn them. And you can see there, it worked fairly well. You go on to the next if you want to there. May 25th, we had some blooms coming on them. The next picture, you can see the branching and stuff, and the nodes did shorten up on them. Good nodulation on the roots and everything. See another picture. I think I've got the next one I have show. Let's see. On June 27th, I had pods. This is the 4.9 maturity beans. So, we set pods from end of June up through September almost. So we had a long period there to set pod, fill pods. We had decent rains, pretty good rains along the way to do that. There again, there's another slide there, Bob, showing the singulation at planting, things like that. And then the death picture there, as you see, we sprayed these beans with a pint of gramoxone to defoliate them, whatever you want to call it there. To kill them, we had, dry pod of really green plant. And that's the first time I'd ever done that. If you haven't done that before, you need to get somebody to kind of guide you that is familiar with that process. You don't want to spray them too early, or you'll kill your pod before the beans fully formed. So play with it some. They really do cut good. There again, if you've never done it, get somebody that's familiar with it before you make a mess. And what we got here next? This is a pod count off one plant, random plant. A sales guy was here. I said, just go out here and pull up a plant. This is the pods off one plant. 135 3-bean pods, 28 2-bean pods, and 10 4-bean pods on one plant. That's the most 4-bean pods I have ever had on a plant, ever. Usually if I find one or two, I've done good, and a lot of plants had those. So got pretty good seed fill on all of them. We had, some timely rains, which that helps too. And doesn't hurt a thing. Tissue samples off of them. You see we've got plenty of nitrogen, probably a little high on it. Let's see, the boron was good on those. We did apply some boron on those a couple of times. I'm not fully versed enough on a bean tissue sample to tell you what you really need to see. This sample's pulled 7, so these were probably an R2 stage because, like I said, we set pods early, had pods a long way through. I guess you can use that as a guideline or baseline, whatever you want to kind of give you an idea of what these did do. Tennessee has a bean contest that requires 3 acres, and I was blessed enough to have a good entry this year. I had those beans made of 101.6, which is by far the best bean I've ever had. And timely rains, good genetics. You can't do it without rain. That's all there is to it. I would have had a little better entry probably on August 26th. We had a 3-inch rain on a Saturday night, and the creek got over the best end of the field. So, I believe I could maybe had a 105, 108 maybe, but we couldn't cut those. That had some flood damage to them. And let's see, okay, what you got here next? These are some of the soil tests off that field where we had in 2019. This is before we really started putting a lot of sugars and humics on. The big thing notice is the salt load there. You got a 1% average on salt, and look at the MACC levels, a 22.5% average on MACC, which that makes Supreme Leader cringe when he sees MACC levels that high. But that's welcome to Tennessee. And on the other slide, in 2023, this tests are done in October every year. You can see our salt load is cut almost in half, a little over in half, really. And notice my MACC number has gone from an average of 22.5 to 17%. So we've really made some progress on that. Got our calcium base up. It's up 10 points. Just regular crusher lime is what I've been using. Gypsum is almost non-existent here. If you can get some, it's extremely expensive. So that's just lime, sugars, and humics. Here's a corn picture. Everybody wants to count the rows, count length, and all that. Both those ears are 16 rounds, 30 some odd kernels long. So don't get fixated on how many rows you've got. If you've got 18 rows or 20 rows, if you've got 16 rows, you can do okay. And that just goes to show you what kernel fill and kernel depth does for you. And pretty important there. This is a picture from 2 years ago from my neighbor. We farm across the fence from each other, and the top one shows the MACC method, and the bottom one shows a dry fertilizer program. Keep in mind these. I take a 2x4, lay it out in the field. We just screw the ears to the board, just a random place, and these were taken probably less than 150 feet from each other. So take the variable out of dirt or whatever. And as you can see, they had some planter issues that year. They have solved that problem. They bought a new case planter this year and went to a liquid program, and not doing the MACC method, but using liquid, side dress and stuff. Had the best corn crop they'd ever had. And let's see here. Pull up your next one then. Okay, I-State guys, they just passed out seeing this. We planned into, we cover a lot of cover crops here, planned into green cover crops pretty on a routine basis. And this is the video showing our soil texture planting we're planting into. Yeah, thumbs up for Tennessee there. There's another picture of it. On the left there, that was this year's yield data. As you can see, I had a little over 200 acres, average over 250 in Tennessee here. I know for some places that's, average corn, but for Tennessee, that's pretty good, really. all those were planted just like you see in that picture in the green cover crops. I spray the day I plant, and there's the results. That's all liquid. Chicken litter was used on all this. About 150 pounds applied nitrogen on 3 or 4 of those. The top one there was my contest field. It did get a little more nitrogen, and that was a complete waste of time and money. Nitrogen is probably the most over applied nutrient that you'll discover doing this program. Is putting on probably way too much, and your co-op guy loves you for it, but your banker does not. Just some picture, showing some corn and stuff, but we're planted into the cover crops. Planter picture again, just showing, doing a good job of planting. Pays off big time. That's the easiest bushels you could gain in anything is in the planter. And so, guys, work on your planter first. Make sure you got it doing what you want to do, getting singulation like that, getting proper seed depth. Those are things you can't overcome. Whatever mistakes you have with the planter, you're not going to overcome. This was a picture. This is in my contest field this fall. That wasn't 6835 in that corn pick. That you see the pickers some ears. Just a field. I had a few bags of 6835 this year to play with. Seems like it's going to be a good corn. Seems like it wins a lot of stuff. Picture right was my contest field. I didn't turn it in this year. I had too much wind damage. We couldn't make a pull anywhere. We could go all the way through. Monitor stay in the 350s, 360s, pretty routine. But when I get to the bad spots, it dropped to the 280s pretty quick. And I just couldn't pull out a good enough entry. I think our entry was going to be around 280, but I didn't even turn it in because usually in Tennessee, if you don't have a 3, you're not going to be in the hunt. And what do you got next there? Oh, this is a video. We talked about humics. This is 28005 in the tank. And when we pump our humics in after we get our nitrogen in, you can see the humics reacting with the salts and the nitrogen. And there again, there's no agitation or nothing, and that's just in the sight tube. So as I like to say, something's doing something. Maybe some other chemist or guy could explain that a little bit more, but the sugars and humics, it's over time. I'm like a lot of us, the first year, we've got the recipe now. Look, we're going to make big corn. You've got to get your soil fixed first. Like I said, lowering the salt loads in the soil, that's something I think often overlooked. Getting your mag levels a little bit under control compared to what they have been, and then over time you'll start seeing results of this. It may take you 2 years, 3 years to really start seeing it, and then you really get the ball rolling. Then you can make an application and then you can see it. You won't need to give them up. You can walk out and see it. So have a little patience with it. Give it some time to work. And then after, maybe 2 to 3 years, you can start tweaking the program to what you need to do. We still struggle to get potassium in the plants. This year is the first year I kept my potassium levels above 2 all year, which is a win for me. We struggle to stay, we'll be 1.6, 1.5, 1.6 a lot of times by the time we get to ear field. But, this year we are keeping them up higher, longer than normal. We can't keep them up as high as Supreme Leader there can, but we're getting better. We're closing the gap. What you got next there you want to show there or whatever?
That's your last one.
Okay. Well, I've bored them long enough probably there. So, but, if you have any questions, just let me know, whatever. I'll be happy to ask you, tell you anything I know there. And, it does work. Have patience with it. Give it time. The big thing you'll save money on is not buying gallons of Wonder Juice, Wonder Jugs, Miracle in Jugs, what I call it sometime. Been down that road, tried all that. Only thing I had to show for it was a canceled check.
Hey, Poe, the road cleaner you run on that planer.
You got a road cleaners with clean sweep.
Cuts
Sharp
it,
tooth.
cuts it back pretty good, it look like.
Yeah, that's the sharp tooth road cleaner. I haven't had this year's the first year I'd had a clean sweep on the road cleaners, and I really like that. You can see what we plant in a lot of times. Now, not every acre has cover crop. Most of it does, and I just think you can do a better job getting all that trash away. Plus, you'll have a cleaner furrow without all that trash down, because you even with the coulter, or of course I have a case planter, we don't have a coulter, but you'll still push some residue down the bottom of the trench, and you want to try to keep that as clean as possible. And road cleaners seem to help with that too. Sometimes I'll plant 30-inch beans with that planter too, with the good road cleaners on it, and I have no way to prove or disprove it, but it seems like I don't have any slug issues, or I have a good set of road cleaners on. On my Kinsey planter, I do not have road cleaners on it, and I have had slug issues with it before. There again, I've got no way to prove or disprove that. It just seems like an observation. Anything else?
Oh, how many gallon of humic have you ran per year for the 5 years?
Usually with a planter, every pass planter or wider up will have at least a gallon, sometimes 2 gallons. Every time I spray, I'll usually put a gallon in. If I'm spraying herbicide, fungicide, whatever, I'm always putting a gallon in. Part of the one in that soil test you saw earlier last year, I put an extreme amount of humics on. I wanted to try to make a change, and it looked like it did. I put on over 100 gallons, sprayed it with a sprayer.
Can you go back to that soil sample, Joe?
Hold on.
So you're putting on 3 to 4 gallon per year on average.
Yes.
Would that be accurate? Okay.
Yeah.
And then the sugar, you're doing how much of that?
At least a pound. I don't go over 2 pounds, especially over corn. I think you make corn plant kind of lazy. That slide number 16, Joe, I think is the one he wants to see right there.
And Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, a gallon of the AgriSweet is around 5 pounds. Is that right?
No. Next one down.
What? This one?
That one. There you go.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the one. That's where I put, to 100 something gallons of humic on. I wouldn't recommend that for everybody. I just, you got to go out on a limb sometimes, try something else. And,
Did it change any of your like phos or potassium, like the part per million levels, or were you trying to just see if the sodium levels change?
I just tried to get the salt down and work on the MACC a little bit. Like I said, just did get crusher lime on it 2 years in a row, and the calcium levels are finally up to where you need them. But the big thing to me is the MACC levels are coming down. And high MACC soils are pretty common here. And then for years we couldn't get crusher lime for several years. All we could get was dolomite lime, which is even worse, so we was hurting ourselves and didn't even know it. But like I said, now we can get crusher lime here. So
what's CEC, your soil?
It was going to be 8 to 12, I think, something like that. It's not very heavy.
You're pretty loamy then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And a lot of clay, more clay loams here, I guess, is more of what our soils are. I tell people we farm a little clay in between the rocks here usually.
Yeah.
So, it just shows, you can change it. I wouldn't have expected to be able to change it, that fast, but it has.
Yeah.
like I say, that's where the 100 bushel beans came off of this year. I had an NCGA on it last year, but we were a little dry, and it just, I think it made in the 250 range. But there again, Tennessee, if you're not in the threes, you're not going to. You got to be at least 3+ ready to have a pretty good shot in Tennessee. Of course, I think we had a winner this year was like 340 something, and he's in toward East Tennessee and farming. It's an old dairy farm, so that's had decades of manure and cows and everything on it. And
Yeah.
he's going to be tough to crack. So
Poe, I'm going to ask. This is intriguing for a lot of guys, especially in here, because I bet there's still plenty putting on dry fertilizer and are leery of making that switch to an all liquid or alleviating a lot of what they've been putting on. I mean, it took me a long time to convince myself of that, but your phos levels, your potassium levels, are you just running a liquid in your planter and Y drop like Kevin? And obviously you alleviated the dry, but what have you noticed in your soil samples on P and K, with the two major ones?
my soil test level, I am using chicken litter on most things. Usually 2 tons is what I'm using.
Okay.
And, my soil test levels have come up every year since I've quit using dry.
Yeah.
Of course, dry, everybody wants, you've been told that you have to have dry fertilizer. And the more I get into this, the more I'm of the opinion, nothing good comes out of the back of a co-op fertilizer truck.
Nope. Agreed.
And the salt loads of this stuff that you see, and you think about how much people here. A typical thing here, people spread like 100 pounds of urea, 150, 200 pounds of DAP, 150, 200 pounds of potash. Just think of how much salt you throw out there on top of the ground all at one time.
Yeah.
In the spring. And then think, how long does it take for that salt to wash out? If you have to use dry, and I know some people do, it's just, I think if you spread it in the fall, especially your P and K, and give some time for those salts to wash out, I think is probably advantageous.
Yeah.
There's some people, there's just no way around it.
Yeah.
But I've got some farms that haven't had any dry fertilizer on, and because of the rental situation, I'm not allowed to use litter on them, but they're still making 200 bushel corn even in a average year.
Yeah.
So, and another thing you'll notice as time goes on too, is your corn yields go up, your bean yields will follow.
Yeah.
Beans seem to be more of a scavenger. And if you've got, a buddy of mine told one time, the best fertility for a bean crop is a good corn crop in front of it. And I believe that.
That biomass, just more carbon. Beans are the carbon lovers, but I guess just along the same lines, we talk about the salt of dry fertilizer, but if you've ever put 6,000 gallon of pig manure on, that's salt. So anyway, the first year I did that, I went from, it was like 0.6% sodium up to 2.8. And
Wow.
the next year it was still above 2. And that was the year I wasn't running any humics. And then the next year I started using, it was a different liquid, but I put on 5 gallon. Keep in mind, this is another field, same thing. It was 5,000 gallon. It got to 2.5, and then we ran the 5 gallon of humic throughout the year. The next year it was back to 1.1. So
Okay.
big deal on the humics with just the salt alleviation. So it's just nice to see this as another proof of the theory, so.
Yeah. And, the healthier you make your soils in the long term, the more results you'll see out of when you add, a gallon of boron or, 5 gallons of whatever you're putting on. That's something else I've noticed too. We've applied boron several times in the past, and we don't seem to get anything out of it. Well, now when I put stuff on, I can see things happening. So,
Yeah.
like I say, as I say, you know, something's doing something. So,
Yep.
trying to pull up my soil test here. Of course, now I can't get them on my phone here, but I know my P and K levels have gone up. I've got it on another slide somewhere if I can find it. Of course, anytime I want to find a picture, I never find the one I want right then. But they are improving, and there again, it just takes time to, you know, you can't fix 50 years of damage to your soil in 2 days or 2 years, whatever. Give it a couple of years, you'll turn it around, and I think you'll start seeing everything improve as time goes on.
Yep.
Another thing you can look for too is earthworm activity. If you got plenty of earthworms, you're doing good.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy seeing, and that's more or less in my silt loam stuff. But yeah, you see a crazy amount of activity, especially on the farms where, you know, the manure was put on 2 or 3 years ago. And, you know, it's probably received close to 15 gallon of humic over those 3 years. And the trash, I take pictures of, you know, corn on corn with the trash each year, and, you know, at the exact same times. And it's going down, it's going away, and the earthworm activity is a lot higher than it used to be. So,
well, we'll, in about a year, we can break this stuff down. There won't be any residue left. You can go by some of my cornfields that were in corn last year. You find very little residue. You might find a cob or two here and there, maybe a little piece of stalk, and that's it.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can go by some of your neighbors' fields, and it looks like they shelled it last week.
Yeah.
You know,
mine still looks like that. It's not quite to where I want it to be, but baby steps.
well, you know, we're warmer here a lot of times. I mean, we've been in the upper 50s last few days, which I know, you know, the soil activity doesn't completely stop, but it does slow way down. And, and you know, we'll start warming back up. You know, we'll start having, you know, a lot of activity in March and stuff, and then go all the way up through November. So, you know, we've got a lot of time for stuff to break down.
Yeah.
You know, people, you know, you can buy all this stuff, this residue stuff to break down the residue, do this, do that. Go spray you some humic, some sugars on it. You're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Save the Wonder Jug stuff. You know, you've seen, we sprayed a quart of this and look what it did. Okay. Then they tell you the rest of the story. We put on a quart of this and we put on a gallon of humic and a gallon of sugar and 5 gallons of nitrogen. I go, well, okay, why'd you waste money on bug stuff then? You're feeding the bugs you got. I'm a proponent of feed what you have.
Yeah.
You know, you've got the bugs there. They just need a little booster shot every now and then.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate your input here.
You're welcome.
One thing I wanted to say about Poe's presentation here, and he sort of hit on it here just a little bit, that his beans, your 101 bushel beans, came after our corn program, a MACC corn program. So I think that's something that we've all learned here. If we've been in the program for 3 or 4 years, that our beans are just about always better following the program. And I think that helps quite a bit, guys, knowing that, because these beans are so fickle. You can go out and spend a lot of money on them, and sometimes you get a return and sometimes you don't. So that was an important message that I got from Poe. Thank you.
What fertility did you put on the soybeans?
Last fall they had 4 tons of chicken compost, which I'm trying to build this bottom up for, you know, contest corn too, by the way. And then this spring, it inadvertently had another 2 tons of regular litter put on it. So that's 6 tons of chicken litter at one time on it, which I wouldn't advise that for a lot of places. But, you know, that's one reason I did the burn down program I did on them, to try to, because I knew if I'd left them alone, they'd have been 10 feet tall. So another thing, I think a lot of people struggle with making better beans. I think we're just not fertilizing enough for beans. I know you guys have all seen the charts, you know, how much P and K it takes to make 80 bushel bean and 200 bushel corn or whatever. Well, beans, it takes more potassium to make big beans than it does corn. And I think that's where, in my area, a lot of people struggle. They get this 50, 60 bushel bean and they just stay there. Well, they're still putting down 100 pounds of potash, which, we know now is just not near enough. You got to have just a good base fertility and plenty of it to make big beans. It's just, we've got to kind of set our mindset on how much fertility we want to put on. And it's like corn. Corn yields are trended up. People just, they're trading on genetics. They're still putting the same fertilizer down they want for, 150 bushel corn. Now they're making 200. Wonder why they're not making more. 200, I think you could take anyone and grow 200 bushel corn now with the genetics we have. 225, 230, and now you're starting to pay attention. 250, you're doing something that's working.
So do you want Travis to go next then?
Yeah. Poe, we appreciate it. That's pretty good talk there. Damn good results, changing your profile, dropping 5% on your base saturation of mag is really damn good. That's, you're only going to get better the lower you can keep dropping that mag. So
Well,
good job.
You remember my phrase, we don't mess around. Go big or go home.
Go big or go home. Exactly.
All right. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Travis, are you ready to talk?
Sure thing. Yeah, whatever works. I don't know if I'm going to be as good as Poe is, but I'll do my best. So.
He's a hard one. He's a hard one to follow. You got to admit.
He is. Well, I've been doing it for 5 years. I mean, we got 2 years under our belt and we've seen success, but you give us another 2 or 3 years, I think we'll be showing some of the same things. I mean, he has things that he's working on that like salt load that we have it, but not as high as that is. I mean, we're lucky to have a sandy soil that would leach out and move that kind of stuff. Our problem is we had so much water over the years that it moved all the salts up, and we're trying to just get it out. Everybody has different challenges and going from there. So, I guess like what it has on the screen here, is what I sent Joe. We did, we do tissue samples every week, corn, soybeans. I try to pull, probably 4 samples, 5 samples from each crop, over the last couple of years to get us a good baseline on what we're doing. And, we did the program last year to be about as full extent as we can. We do everything, all liquid program. The only thing we do dry is we strip till. And we've been strip tilling gypsum here last year and this year. And then we've been started spreading lime to get our calcium up. Only options we have are pelletized, and it comes from someplace near Fort Dodge, Iowa. And it may be expensive, but it's the only option that we get. We've going through all that. I mean, I've got a couple fields in numbers wise, and going throughout the whole year, we probably had, all the numbers were higher than they ever have been for all our nutrients, especially going into the reproductive stages, and then they finally dropped off. But they were still higher for the most part, for everything that we were trying to accomplish biggest one was moving boron and then moving our zinc levels higher and trying to keep our potassium levels up there too. Now, really, I mean, it's an all-around approach, but that's what we were really focusing on, and I think we accomplished it. I mean, we haven't sat down with Greg or on a looking at every field and doing all that, because we've had the nicest fall we've probably had in the last 5 years. So we've been trying to get all these projects done, and we luckily don't have snow up here. And what Joe put on here is, this is what our main project has been here the last 5 days, 10 days, week, whatever. We've wanted to do this for the last 10 years, and we finally said, you know what, we're gonna hire someone, because there's no way in God's green earth that I'm gonna do that. So these guys are out there doing this now. What they're doing is they're installing 15-inch tile and putting a lift station in. The issue that we have is that we have it'd be 9 quarters that all come into one spot water wise, that all drains into one area. Luckily though, that's where we own that, and that's where that lift station is. But the problem is that you gotta have it in deep and big tile. And this is not something we could do with the plow that we had. We ended up selling the plow because I didn't want to kill my dad prematurely by doing it all. When we did it, I mean, we installed a couple 200 acres worth of it, and it was interesting. It really is. Best thing you can do to learn your soil is to put tile in. You get to see all the horizons and different things. So they're out there doing this now. They're gonna be doing the 4-inch installs here later, and we're gonna do, I don't know, it's probably like 180 feet of 20-foot spacing, and then do the rest of it at 60-inch or 60-foot spacing. And then we'll mark it all out, and we'll see what kind of yield differences that we're going to get. I mean, I talked to Kevin over at your guys' field day here for a while, and decided to do that. We would probably do it all on 20s, but we wanted to also see what the differences were, and just to know in our head going, yeah, we're going to get X amount more, of beans and corn over the 20s. And you can say, well, we can definitely afford to do it, which I think we're going to do it anyways. It's always nice to have that number going forward. So, yeah, so what he's showing here now, this is a wild hair that we got of taking ears at R5 and R6 and getting a nutrient analysis of it and comparing it to our tissue samples. I talked with Craig quite a bit about it, and Dad, and we had no idea if this is actually going to mean anything, but we did it, and it is interesting of like what we're actually getting into the ear. Because I thought, well, I'm not selling the leaves, and I am selling the ear. And the Midwest Labs guys were saying, yeah, we'll try doing it, see what happens. And this is what we came up with. And I would be really curious to see if anybody that's in here would know anything more about these tests, to see are these high numbers, are they low numbers, are they anything comparable, for feed samples. I really don't know. And I have 2 weeks worth of information off of it, because I kind of got the idea late in the season going, well, and I also wanted to just compare them to what our tissue samples were going, okay, is my boron, it may be, an 80, 90 or whatever parts per million on my tissue sample, but where does it actually stand in my corn plant? Or in my ear, actually, not just what my leaves are. I'm like, I know that it all correlates together, but like, if to actually move the numbers weight wise, where do I have to be on my tissue samples? And I really don't know. I mean, that's where if anybody has any good ideas on that, I'd more than likely, be open to see, okay, yeah, those are higher, those are lower, those are normal, sort of thing. These would be the R6 ears of the same field. And there are some increases on them. And then wherever the tissue sample, I think it's the next one down, Joe. One right there. Those are what my tissue samples were throughout the whole year, from V4 to R6. And my soil sample numbers are up in the corner, and what that spot did. We had a 280 average right there, and then we did one of our contest plots were right there, and that one averaged 282. Or no, that one was 280. But either way, this is what we tried to work on all these different numbers throughout the year, and what we did for applications is on the next slide, but we really tried to get our boron levels above that 40. And like what Kevin was saying, once you get it above there, it's easier to keep them there. I would totally agree. I was kind of curious of how, it's true, but does it, go into our numbers? And it is. I mean, once we got into there, it was a lot easier to get our boron levels higher. Our calcium levels, I don't think we got the full effect off of our strip till with the gypsum under there moving the calcium. I think we did in the sulfur, but for strip tilling since 2008, it takes, like for us, it took a year or two of that fertilizer placement to really truly all break down, get within the whole root zone, and actually get it into the plants. Like when we go back and plant on these strips and strip till it again here in 2025, I think we'll get a better, uptake of calcium, which should uptake everything else better too. So that's one of the things that we've learned over the years. Plus, the same strips we've been doing for 18 years since then were the same strips we do now. So I have a high load of phosphorus and a little bit of potassium. We never got carried away. We did right away at the beginning, but that was just bad advice. The guys wanted us to put down way too much. And if you get through all of these are our applications, it's all liquid, it's all on the planter or all through Y drops. That didn't turn out very good, but before any of this MACC group stuff, or even before we knew, about any of this, we had to come to a realization of how do I increase our yields by, what we have on the, going through the year, and what we have for already, so I don't have to go out and spend a ton of money. And so we ended up taking everything on our planner and trying to figure out how to do it better. And over the years, before we had downforce, or delta force, and before we had speed tubes, and it's like, if you look at my planner now, it's about a precision planning setup. I mean, there's not something on there that they don't have that we probably don't. Which at the beginning of all that, it was kind of like, well, we're gonna learn this thing the hard way, and test everything and make sure everything is gonna work. But before we did all that, spend all the money on all that, I did it how everybody was doing before all this data. I had the 2020 in there, and I'm like, I got to figure out how to grow better corn. So we started using that, and my biggest thing, anything I could control on the planter to get, was basically slowing down. I mean, I slowed down to, before we got speed tubes, I was planting 2.5 miles an hour, drove myself nuts, and drove my dad nuts, drove my wife nuts when she'd want to come out and ride with me, and it'd take me an hour and a half to get back to the other end of the field. But the thing that we found out from going from 2012 to 2016, before we really added all the technology to it, other than just a 2020 monitor, we moved our APH by 40 to 50 bushels, depending on what the field is. And we moved from 170 to now we have a APH of about a 221, I think it was. And I personally would say everything before that, it's all technology and planner driven, to get everything right. I mean, I will beat my head against the wall to get that planner to run right. So over the years, we've come up with all this, what's on the screen here, to give me a guide of what numbers that I have to see on the monitor as I'm planning to give me the best yield at the end of the year. And it can be a big difference. I mean, we had it one year to where it was rough as hell, and you're out there, and it looked like, the monitor was jumping all over the place, and I just kept slowing down and making this thing, make the planner work the way it should. And it was, I don't know, I think it was like about a 20 some bushel difference, and by just having good planning. And this was before all the liquid everything. And, so we got to the point where we had a lot of the technology and the planter and the strip till all dialed in to give us a better yield experience. But I look back at it and we never had a year to where we could take a fertility application or a whole season of fertility applications and actually influence our yield more than like what Paul was saying. You'd have a few bushels here and there, and then it would never work again. And you're just like, well, what is going on here? And it was very defeating after a few years of it. And we were just kind of like, well, we got to figure something else out. And then, we were lucky enough to, find the MACC group and Kevin and Terry and Craig and Joe and all these guys to start moving our fertility program in the right direction. And really, since we joined, I mean, I know it's only 2 years, but we had a really good year last year, even though we've had some really terrible weather. And it was just been not terrible, but it's just been extremely up and down the last 2 years. Last year, we had a lot of movement in our tissue samples and we had good yields. But this year we actually set all-time highs for our farm for yields. And we had a 255 average on our corn and a 67 average on our soybeans. And I really am happy about the corn, but probably the one I'm happiest about is the soybeans, because most of those are planted around June 1st. We had a extreme amount of snow last year. We had to melt 80 or 90 inches of snow, and we had snowbanks into May. We didn't think we were going to get anything planted, but we got hot weather and dry weather for a couple weeks, and we were lucky enough to get our soybeans planted. And we averaged 667 on that on about 940 acres. And we had probably 2 or 3% of that drowned out, and another 5, 8, 10% of it that they should have died, but they didn't from being underwater. And I mean, we're just very, happy at how the program is moving forward of all that. And we've really, this year's especially of how taking our knowledge about the fertility of it all and moving it all forward. But if you still look at all this, I spend probably 2 weeks going through all the different information of tissue samples, yield data, test plots. I mean, anything that can come off a monitor or a computer, to put it all together to come up with all this, to show all the bell curves and to show where you should be at, where we should be at. I mean, it may not be the same on everybody's, but I would say it's pretty damn close because normally we'd probably have the relatively same, conditions going into planning wise. And I don't know, I mean, I'm always trying to figure out something different and how we're going to move forward for next year. And that's why I've been looking forward to going through this stuff and seeing what everybody thinks about, for a long, since harvest was done, so I can get, so we can start making those changes going into next year. But we like kind of sum it all up. I guess we focused on the planter for the longest time, and we made big strides on it. And if we don't, our philosophy is if I don't get it right, planting, it doesn't matter what you do the rest of the year. It doesn't matter if you wide drop and we do it, or if you or any of that kind of stuff. That all you're doing is you're trying to put a Band-Aid over a shitty situation that you're going to start out with. And it's like I look at it like, if I'm planting, if we're going to average 240, if you take that times whatever price, you do the math of like what you're planting per acre. I mean, it's a lot of money by doing a really good job, and you can really cut yourself off, gross dollars wise by doing a real crappy job. And that's just something that we keep telling ourselves. And the same thing with, like he was saying, with the soybean singulation, I went down to 40,000 seeds per acre on beans this year, and that one drowned right out. But I think we're going to have a lot of places next year that will have 50 and 60,000, and having yields that were up in the 80s, 90s in places. We had places that we were cutting hundreds. So everything so far, you kind of put it all together. It's all working towards moving forward with our yields and our return per acre. And like for our nitrogen, we were at 145 units, and we grew 255 corn and all farm wide. I think, like Kevin was saying, that's a good efficiency, to have. And if you go into our stock nitrate test, do Joe, and we don't have to talk about that now, but you can talk about it later. But I for what their numbers at Midwest Labs, I mean, we were high on everything. And I do think that's something that we'll be able to cut back on. That probably will be one thing we'll test more next year.
What is your applied nitrogen, Travis?
We had 145 units this year.
Oh my goodness. So that's
Yeah,
really good.
Yeah, great.
And that's something that's like and we can go over this more later or whatever you got too, Kevin, but just to compare it to other people's. But I really don't know, how low can you take this, from just out of experience. I know you talked about it a little bit, but
So, for us, like I said, I think for my yield goals, what I'm trying to do, my cutoff for us to be efficiently growing over 300, 140 is probably our minimum. That's probably about my bottom line now. But like I said, my yield goals are a little bit different than some of the other guys. But I think truthfully, and I hate to say this, but I think if you're wide dropping, banding all your fertility, running the humics, I mean, 0.5, 0.6 would be the sweet spot, my opinion. So if you're trying to grow 300 bushel corn, 150 pounds, from what we're seeing on our farm, us trying to put 200 pounds out there, we don't gain. In fact, we lose bushels when we go over 180 so far, what we're seeing year after year. Anytime we get over 180, we go to 200 pounds, not only is we're wasting nitrogen, but our yields are going down. So, I don't know what the minimum is, because everybody's place is going to still use so much for the stalk. So I don't know how low we can go. Now, your organic matter, what you're going to be giving off, is going to make a difference on that too. But, just for us, I'm saying my bottom line is, for my yield goals, I don't think I could drop under 140 for our farm.
Yeah.
But like I said, guys, thinking, well, if we're trying to grow, 250 bushel corn, do we cut it back to 125? I don't know if we can go that far. You're gonna have to make some strips, just because inevitably, building that factory, you're going to use X amount, and it's, we'll talk a little bit about the nitrate, stalk nitrate, but that kind of gives, I'm not a huge fan on that, because you can get false indications on that. Just because it's, down there in the bottom of the stalk where you're pulling it, does not mean it's translocating up to the ear. So, I'm not a huge fan, and truthfully, I don't get even on our farm, we get different readings. Some of our highest nitrate test is some of our lower yielding corn, just because it's tied up. Our calcium level's low. We're not moving a lot through the plant. So like I said, the nitrate kind of gets me confused on when we talk about that, because you got to go back through the whole year and actually analyze your tissue samples and see what's actually moving up the plant instead of staying down there in the stalk. So kind of confusing to me. And I don't know if anybody can answer them 100% right, because like I said, you go back, you know, I know several guys pulled them, and it'd be kind of interesting to see what you guys have on the nitrates, if it correlates to high yield. But you know, we've had them both ways. The highest was our highest yielding, and some of it was our lowest yielding. So I think that has to do, you know, you have to go back and correlate that back to analyze that with your tissue samples to see what's actually moving in the plant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was sort of my idea of doing this. After talking to Kevin, maybe he didn't like it as well, but maybe Joe can still put together a spreadsheet on this. And I don't know if he's got any yields correlating to those numbers or not, but any of you guys that did do them, didn't send them in, maybe send them to Joe with a yield related to that. So hopefully we'll get through this, but yeah, it's still good knowledge here. Go ahead.
So Travis, I'll share this with you. Or you did a fascinating thing about the corn. You take the first one where it's 51% moisture, and you look at the protein is 4, and then you've got a drier one at 41.07, but it's going up in protein. When we used to figure corn rations for farmers, when I was at the co-op, we'd always use, like, shell corn would be like around 7% protein. And you get into some really good corn, it might even be 8. So my curiosity here would be, if the higher the test weight, let's say Kevin was able to test his 68-pound test weight corn, my guess is the protein is probably up around 9 and 10. And so the better the crop, or the better the health of the plant, that protein should be higher as an indicator, so to speak. And then that would correlate down through your nutrients as well, if it was a healthier plant with a higher test weight. So that's fascinating what you did there.
Yeah, and I think I'll probably try doing it again next year, just to see, because you know, if we try to keep moving all our numbers higher, you know, what do they, you know, for next, you know, going into next year, if we can, or however that works, if we do move them higher, how do they change on these, you know, example, or how on these, you know, tissue, or on these analysis here. And I have one other field, and they are a little bit different, but I don't know. It's just kind of, I don't know, a little kind of wild hair. So.
If you want to correlate, like taking it when you did these, and then also run another sample at harvest when it is around like 14 or 15%, 16%, and see how much different it correlates to.
Yep.
And then compare that to yield out of that field. So did it really raise that protein level at the end of harvest that I got 250 bushel compared to 300 bushel?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and get the whole thing done. And that's probably one thing. That's a good point. We'll have to do that for next year. And even, you know, like we cut this field at 27%. And, you know, we could still, hard thing is, like, you know, it's like, where do you, after we dried it, you know, it's like, where are those ears at? I mean, that's the hard, unless you just keep them and dry them and, you know, go that route, or however. I only was taking, I think it was like 6 or 8 years. So it's not like it was, you know, that big of a deal. But I would say the other thing with, after kind of a little away from this, but the other thing that we had a lot of success on, it was kind of a headache this year, was picking of the wet corn we started at 28% and dried it all. And by the time we got done, even through a small snowstorm and some delays, we ended up at 22% when we finished. But we figure we had to pick up 10 to 12 bushels on the minimum. I mean, we think it was higher. We had one strip where we cut, you know, a couple hundred feet, and it was 29%. And at the time we didn't know that we should have just kept going and picked, but this is our first year of doing it. But we came back and that was the last field that we did. And it was 6.5 points of moisture difference or 7 points. And it was 18 bushels difference. And I mean, even if I was half wrong, it's still a win. So we're going to set up, we're going to change we're going to add just a few. We've got to change out an auger. The bearings want to just keep going out on all the damn time. And we're going to switch that up. And so we can actually hand wet corn, because there is a big difference between handling 22% corn and 28% corn. And, it's a learning curve, but I mean, we're looking at like, how can we do this better? Because I do think we picked up. It's conservatively 10 bushels is probably actually closer to 20, but it was a big win and a lot of it, I mean, there's no corn on the ground, from the combine or header loss or anything tipping over. And we had a weather delay and all that, but we would have probably been done without that. We'd have been done probably 10 days before anybody else around here. And that's still getting our beans cut too. And it was one of those things where we go, yeah, it's eye opening. And we've told a couple of our neighbors and they look at us like we're crazy. And that's perfectly fine. I don't really care, but because we'll be done and they'll still be doing it. And, like up here, they can say, oh yeah, it's rain and cool, temperatures, and shit, we'll get 6 inches of snow or we've had 18 inches and come through, and you have wind and all this stuff. And we just don't get we just don't have that luxury, not any luxury, but we just have more of a chance of getting snow that just sucks to work in, come anytime after about October 10th. So we're just like, we do it and it's go time to, from start to finish. And if we can cut earlier, we would. I mean, all of our corn was planted on the earliest corn we had was May 16th and everything else was May like 21st, 2nd, 3rd. So if we could get 2 weeks earlier on it, we'd be cutting probably 2 weeks earlier, which would be awesome. Everybody thinks would be getting back into cattle and doing wet corn, but we'll just be pumping it through our dryer and getting it done. So,
Good deal.
Yeah. So
That's exciting, Travis.
it is. I mean, that's what I'm really looking forward into next year, because like I told Craig, I said, we're really feeling like our next yield increase will be off all the fertility that we're doing and adjusting it, however it goes, to whatever we got to do, working on our potassium and calcium and boron and, pulling our nitrogen back. So we're looking forward for next year. And that's like, we're putting all that tile in so we can actually farm the darn thing, because you can't farm it with a foot of water on the top of it. And nice thing is it is. I mean, when they dug that lift station in, they were down, I think it was 18 feet. And I was looking at the hole and the water was just gush. It's like they hit a water line. And I'm like, we'll turn that sucker off about July 4th and it will just sub-irrigate the rest of the year. And like our weather this year was really, I mean, we had probably a normal rain season, but rain amount. But our thing is like that'd be 3.5 incher. Then you go 3 weeks with no rain and 3.5 incher. I mean, it was not, rain wise, the amounts were fine, but like the way they came would be hard on everything. Plants, soil, whatever, you name it. Just getting into doing things wasn't easy either. But yeah, so
yeah. I've got a comment here. What Travis has done here is what we like from you guys. I'm sure others of you have this information, and we want this school to be about what you guys are having and seeing. Kevin has some awful good information sometimes, but the feedback from you guys is very important to us and to the rest of the members. So anybody else got this kind of information, we've got other meetings that we'll be glad to get you on. So thanks again, Travis.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you. You know, I say this about the program. I said in perfect years, anybody's program will work. You know, if you don't have heat, you don't have stress, you get perfect weather. But it just seems like around us, you know, we really shine when we are dealt a lot of adversity. And I think that's part of, you know, since I'm just talking on our farm, you know, when we first started this, you know, we had 20, 30 acres that we considered our high yielding ground. And now basically anything we get a hold of, you know, we can turn it around and make it, you know, some of our highest yielding stuff. Like I said, we had, you know, 2 entries. Our highest entry was a field that we haven't been in the contest for 12 years. Just because of tiling. And you know, I've always talked big about tiling. You know, we just finished up on another pretty big project this last week here that, you know, we tiled more ground. You know, we're set on 25-foot centers. Now I'm not saying everybody has to be that way, but with the way our ground is wet, you know, we see and we do all of our plowing ourselves. We did lay some 18-inch in. We had to close in a ditch, and we're pretty dry. We were down about 12 foot with a track hoe digging, and we never had no water in a river bottom, and we still didn't have any water running in. So we are fairly dry here. But the interesting about the tile this year, it seems like even on the dry years, we see a benefit because where we pulled our yield off, our high yield this year was in a field we just tiled this spring, and we had the corn was actually in waves just because one, you know, pulling the tile plow in, you open up that ground that deep, eliminate all the compaction all the way down. But number two, you know, it's just all about biology. You know, the more oxygen you can get in your soil, the more biology you're going to have. And I'm, you know, 100% believe, you know, when we tile on 25-foot centers, we take a 30-foot head, you know, we make sure on our final check that we are pulling 2 tile lines in on that final recheck, the one that counts. So, you know, the tiling is huge in our area. I mean, just an absolute must for us. And, you know, the good thing is, you know, our farm keeps getting better and we don't have to go out and pay for all this damn high rent ground just because we're making our ground that much better. And, you know, I always did say that tiling in Southern Indiana is the #1 thing that you can do for an ROI year after year for us. But anyway, so we'll go through some more samples here. Are these soil samples or tissue samples, Joe?
I think this is a tissue sample. He's only got this one. You can read over there to the side.
All right, I got to move this stuff again here.
Rob, are you on?
Yeah, I'm on here if you can hear me.
You know, you want to go ahead and explain it if you want.
So this is my second year. No wide drop on this. This was all put on with the planter, or everything that's put on here is on with the planter. I'm going to be able to wide drop. I'll be able to have the capabilities to do that next year. That's in furrow and 2x2, and the yield on this farm was 282, I believe. And the Co-Alliance, our local fertilizer company, has a yield contest, and my yield contest on this came out of this field, and it was at 325.
Oh wow, good deal.
Yeah, and the high I saw in the field in a different area was like 357. So we had good conditions, and we were dry like everybody else. But that's kind of representative of what my tissues. I had 4 areas the last 2 years that I pulled tissue samples, and that's kind of these are pretty representative of what I got.
Yeah,
So
I
kind
mean,
of
actually, do what?
go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, just looking through your NP and K, them numbers are pretty good. Looking, how many gallons of P and K was you running?
So my normal program's about 170 pounds of 170 pounds of nitrogen with 28 pre-plant incorporated. I put on 6 or 7 gallons of ammonium sulfate or amthio.
Mm-hmm.
And then my in-furrow on this, and that's all pre-plant. There's nothing put on side dress. My in-furrow is 723.5, 4 gallons, quart of carbon, quart of sugar, 2 quarts of AgriSweet, or a quart of Surge, not sugar, 2 quarts of sugar, quart of zinc, a pint of Phycoterra. Then 2x2x2 was 4.5 gallons of KTS, 3.5 of 723.5, 2 quarts of carbon, 2 quarts of sugar, 2 quarts of boron, quart of mag, and a quart of zinc. And that's all the fertility I had on it all season.
I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty damn good yields for getting most of it up, or getting it all up front. I'm just looking, you were dry, you said, so to pull them kind of yields off and your calcium dropping like that, that's pretty good. But you can see your boron kind of petered out on you a little bit. If you're gonna be able to wide drop,
I got the tip of rise in it early, and then it went right back to normal.
Yeah. Which I think, that just goes to show you, I think the plant uses that much. It does. I mean, that's why we use the gallons that we do. So, it didn't leach, you were dry. So, the plant uptake was that much. But, with your wide drops, you could probably be a little bit efficient. You could cut back, pull all your nitrogen, run your normal 2x2 program, and then your first one, I'm just guessing, maybe run like 15 to 20 gallon of 32 on it, and then your last run, you'll just see what your tissue samples are holding at. You might be able to get by with 10, because if you were broadcast or spraying 170 units now on before,
right, with the chemicals, kind of a weed
with the chemicals, I mean, you ought to be at least a third more. I mean, just common sense is telling me you should be at least a third more efficient by banding everything and spacing it out. So, if you're going to run how many gallon on your 2x2?
I just bought a Hagee, so it's all going to be new to me. I can.
No, on your planter, on your 2x2.
Oh, 2x2. I'm running about 10 to 12 gallons.
Okay, so your numbers look good there. We're at 739 GDUs. I'd probably still stay with that load there. Well, you got a little bit coming off on your up front, so I may run 15 gallon. Looking at your tissue samples, I might run 15 gallon through my 2x2.
Okay.
And then probably plan on another maybe 15 or 20 gallon, maybe probably 20 gallon on my second pass. And then your last pass, if you could make 2 trips, you'll probably be in that 10 to 15 gallon on your last pass on your 32. So you'd be at 35, 50 gallon. Yep, that should be plenty. You probably even cut back a little bit on, probably go 15, 15, 15, probably what I would stay at. You're gonna have to add some boron on your wide drops, because that's kind of typical. See it drop down, you're in that 800, so you're missing that first wide drop of boron picking up. So I would probably put another gallon or so right there, maybe 2 gallon. Probably gonna have to go with 2 gallon to get you up above that 40.
Okay. move it in this soil like that?
So what kind of CCs you got?
No, 12 to 15 probably on that field. I don't have a soil test right here in front of me.
Yeah, I would probably run a gallon to 2 gallon on that and run your humics with it to kind of stabilize it a little bit. You know, I mean, most guys, I know Brandon Christensen had good boron numbers, and he said he didn't really see a response in it, but you know, normally we could see a, you know, 15, 20 bushel just out of the boron. Now Brandon's kind of, you know, we're still thinking on what's going on Brandon's there, why he didn't see a response in it, but I think other than that, you know, that ought to help your calcium number come up a little bit with the boron. Because you could see with your highest boron, you had the highest calcium numbers, and then when they kind of tailed off a little bit, they dropped, and then you know something happened at 1300 GDUs which you should be almost done. Now you're probably done pollinating then, ain't you? How many day corn you plant?
That was 6835, so 100.
You're probably still pollinating in, but you're getting to the tail end, but your calcium did rebound after that. And your boron did very little, but that's probably what I would work on right there with your Y drops. You know, manganese needs to come up a little bit, but you didn't put any manganese out, right?
Yeah, I put a quart on.
A quart on, yeah. You probably need to bump that up on your first Y drop and see what kind of response you get, maybe with a gallon on it, see what it does.
Okay.
But still impressive corn numbers on that. I'm really impressed with the numbers for having all your fertility up front. That's really good. Really good.
We were probably, our farm wide average was like 260, just a hair over 260, and that's 20 bushel better than anything we've had.
Good.
And I would attribute it. I mean, the hybrids 6606 and 6835 was a lot of it. But I'd say this program, just, you know, what limited use I've got out of 2 years here has really helped it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Hey,
Well,
I've got a comment real quick we've got a few of the new guys on here yet, and something probably some of them haven't got emailed to them. That yellow or that orangey yellow line across the top there of these tissue samples, that is Kevin's nutrient pull during those units or during that growth stages. So for you all to understand, we will send this to you and you'll understand it a little bit more, but he's trying to match those tissue samples to that top line. So that's what he's trying to do here. So go ahead, Kevin.
Sorry here. I'm trying to answer some questions here. Guys are sending here. But no, I mean, that would be a good starting point now that you're, you know, going to pull tissue samples, and then, you know, we can really adjust to what your tissue samples with the Y drops. That's what's nice about the Y drops. You know, you can make your in season adjustments. But man, that's good corn. I'll tell you, it's pretty stout looking tissue samples for everything being up front. I'm not gonna lie, they look good.
Yeah, hopefully we can improve on them with the Y drop.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, I think they'll be a big game changer for you. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for your help. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, I see Taylor Wishmeyer.
Yeah, I'm here. I was getting ready to ask about those sulfur numbers on there. I mean, that's very similar to what we're seeing. We're obviously shorting ourselves on sulfur somehow, some way. So thinking dropping some gallons of the 32 out and adding more ATS. Yeah.
So Just trying to think here a little bit. What are you thinking? 5 gallon or what?
I'm just thinking maybe switching to more of a 28005 mix.
Oh, and you just maybe run the same gallons?
Yes, which would
Yeah.
drop us.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a bad thing. Run the same gallons and get a
I
little
mean,
bit more sulfur.
Seems like we start. I think we've talked about this for probably 3 years now. We start off low on sulfur, and no matter what we try to amend throughout the season, we can't budget. So
So
start off higher.
sulfur is kind of like the P and K. It seems like once you get behind, even us, we'll have fields there that, well, in fact, we went out one year and we ran 25-gallon ATS, and once we got behind, I mean, we might have raised it 0.05, 0.06 with that 25-gallon of ATS. Now, here's the question, and I still have not got a good answer on that. Is it boiling down to the nitrogen? I talked earlier about what we're seeing with the nitrogen load when I come out and wide drop that double shot, where I just went double rate of the nitrogen on the rest of it. It affected our sulfur just as bad as what it did nitrogen as far as the tissue samples going down. So, you may have something there pulling instead of running 32 if you're having a sulfur issue, running that 28005 just to get a little bit more sulfur in. And actually, it may help a little bit just by bringing that big shot of nitrogen down at one time. So, yeah, that's probably a pretty good idea, Taylor.
What's your ratio on pounds of N compared to pounds of S you're putting on?
So we're only really on most of our ground, the only sulfur now, granted, we're getting quite a bit of sulfur there from the manure over the years, but on most of our fields, we're only putting, maybe the 6 gallons from the 40-2012 on the sulfur, or when we were running the KTS. Very seldom did we ever have to come back in and apply either ATS or something like that later in the season. Now there's a few fields, but I mean, you're talking less than 15% of our acres that we actually have to come back just for sulfur because our numbers are low. So, but our soil samples are pretty decent with sulfur. But we're probably, I don't know, what would that be? Say we're throwing 180 pounds of nitrogen, you're only throwing 6 gallons of 40-2012. So that would be how many pounds? 7, 8.
That's not very much.
Yeah.
That's all. That's about all we've been. Some then and then some wide drop too is really all the sulfur we've been getting on, and I think we're just kind of figuring out that's not enough for us. So
yeah, but that might be a good idea. If you are having issues, drop back, because your nitrogen is probably out, and I've seen your tissue samples. Your nitrogen's not your limiting factor. I mean, your numbers are high enough on your nitrogen. It could be the sulfur thing that's bogging you down a little bit.
I'm kind of lending ourselves to think that way. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, Kev, thanks for only putting one entry in no-till this year too. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, we got several. Yeah, the Wishmeyers. Would you place third? Is that what it was, or second?
Yep. Third.
Yeah. We got several guys to congratulate on here. We got many winners across the MACC group. So we appreciate you guys keep putting these entries in and doing well. One thing I hadn't said here, Joe asked me to do on your questions. If they're simple questions, just put them on the chat and we'll try to read through those. Go ahead.
So Todd, are you on? Todd has some questions, I think.
There he is. Todd Kiefer, you on? I didn't see him on, but he could have been on a phone or something. Participants.
All right. So, let's see what we got. Oh, so we got Eric Sweezy. Here's his stock nitrate test. And then he sent in several soil samples he wanted us to take a look at.
Eric, you on? I have to look and see here.
I think he's on, but
I'm just kind of curious on his first page, if he could tell us the yields on them, just to see if what
Eric?
kind of
Yeah, as I'm
corresponds.
on real
yeah,
quick.
I was gonna say, go ahead.
The first one, a 192. The second one was like a 215. The third one was like a 230, where that was. The next one below that was about a 200. The one below that was a 185. The one below that with 500 was like a 260, 280. The one below that was like a 230. The Watson at the bottom was about a 200. But hey, I had to run. I got things to do. Trying to earn a living here to pay my MACC fee.
Okay. Okay.
You want to come back? You want to come back later with that, Eric? Or will you be back? He must have left. Okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
we
Joe.
We can come back to him if you want.
Yeah.
Here's Norm. Norm dressed back out of Ohio. And then here's his stock nitrate test. And then you can read below what he has to say there if he wants to come on and comment too.
I think I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Sir.
Okay. I don't know. It just seemed like my nitrate levels are a little lower than I want it to be. Everything there's pretty self-explanatory, I think. Yields just, I mean, this corn was pretty good, but this farm had a 10-year average around 235. So it wasn't as stellar as maybe some of my neighbors had. So I'm just trying to get better.
Yeah.
And so there's stock nitrate, tissue, and soil samples are all up to date, and they're probably scanned down. You can see them. I have had these 3 years ago. My base saturation of MACC has been in the 30s. So this field did have mushrooms growing in it this summer. So I think my biology is getting better in the field. And we only had like 12 inches of rainfall, so I was impressed I had mushrooms growing. But I need to get the MACC lowered, need to get the calcium up. My potassium, I'd like that, see that 6 or 7 and not getting it up as quick as I'd like. So I'm just looking for direction.
Yeah, give me a second here. I'm just looking through some of your soil samples here. Your pH. Kind of all over the board. So first thing I would probably do, can you got gypsum there?
We did get some delivered. I don't have it on yet.
Okay, so that's the first thing I'd probably start with is some gypsum. Let's see. Concentrations. Hang on, I'm just doing some calculating here. Thanks, 15. So it looks like your biggest limiting, does it have the pounds? Yeah. So yeah, your calcium would be probably the thing I would start at. Do we have tissue samples here, Joe, with it that we can match up?
Let's see.
They were sent.
There's
Okay.
one. Is that the same field, Norm?
Yes.
Okay.
And that was R4. You got any earlier ones or not?
Yeah, I keep going down. There should be a summary of it all. There's the summary.
Okay.
There you go.
So right off the bat, we should be looking at the, because you're living off the seed, what you pulled out at V6, so you're past the seed. But I mean, there's something going on because right off the bat, we should be starting out off the seed, 4.5 on the nitrogen. I'm just trying to. Calcium's low.
So we put on like a 12 gallon 28 at planting, and then it was so dry the applicator wouldn't go in the ground, so we were late side dressing, and so it got put on at V5. But we had an extremely, I don't remember now, second driest May in 30 years, and then the first 2 weeks of June was extremely dry. And I'm like, and if you look at past years, I'm like, well, we're going to be toast. And then we had like a 3-inch rain and everything took off. And we ended up with one of the better overall yields. All acres, we were like 249 on corn and 71 or 2 on beans. So I don't want to sound like I'm disappointed, but for everything I'm trying to do, I'm wanting to ring the bell higher than that.
Well, we got to get that mag down in the plant, which the problem is you got high base saturations of mag in your soil. That would fix a lot of these issues because it is tying up a lot of nutrients.
So on the gypsum, are you talking about 1,000 pound the acre, 1,500 pound the acre? What?
Are you going to strip it in? Or are you going to broadcast it?
I'll probably broadcast it. I do strip till, but I don't know that I can get this gypsum is wet and it's a big pile now.
Oh. Well, if you're gonna broadcast it, I'd say at least 1,500.
Okay.
So here's something else. Is your ground tiled or not?
This is on 50-foot centers. We had somebody did this summer at 40. But most of what I own is systematically tiled. So yes, but most of it is in that 50-foot, 60-foot range.
Because once you start, you got to make sure you can flush that out. That's what some guys with high mag, even though we put sulfur and stuff like that out there to kind of jar it loose, you still have to have a way for it to disperse itself. So, the 50-foot probably is probably going to help some, but that's probably, the mag I see is your biggest issue right now. Base saturation is pretty high. It's in the plant, it's pretty high, and it's limiting the uptake. Which your K numbers are pretty good for that high of magnesium. On your tissue samples looking through here. But I really do believe if you can knock that mag, at least trying to get it down in the, around 15, because I'm thinking right, you're mid-20s or lower 20s, ain't you?
Yeah, but it's been higher. It's higher than that 3 years ago. It was interesting to see earlier conversations today because, I have 3 years of putting humic and sugar on. And when I started looking at my samples that I got this fall, I'm like, well, they're a lot lower than they've been. And I was surprised it dropped by that much by putting, last year, this field had 4 gallon of humic or fulvic on.
Yeah. So I'm looking here at your, did you wide drop at R1 or something?
No. I got the wide drops and sprayer is too busy for me to switch to wide drops to try to get it on, but I'm hoping to make that change in 2024.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out why you had a jump at R1 on your boron, your zinc.
Well, so I put a gallon on foliar at R1 with
With your Hagging.
yeah.
You didn't burn it at
Nope.
a gallon? Whew. He started getting a little rain then too, didn't you?
Did.
Yeah.
But
So
that was
That's
foliar.
that's probably more of the rain than the gallon of foliar. Because I mean, that gallon of foliar, if it's 10%, that's only like a quarter of a pound of boron that you actually applied. But well, we don't need to. I mean, I guess we can get in that, but most of the time of the boron, that's the problem with boron. The molecules are actually too big to actually penetrate into the cell to get into in the plant structure, foliar on corn. Soybeans a little different, but I mean that's the foliar feeding on the boron is kind of a iffy thing in my opinion, but just looking, I mean, I think your biggest problem is your mag.
Well,
We gotta knock the crap out of that mag because it's hampering a lot of other nutrients. The calcium, which you were dry, but still, I mean, you even started out pretty low on your calcium. Even at V6 there, when you pulled it, even if you were dry, you still should have been starting out at probably a 0.6 instead of a 0.38. And I blame the mag on a lot of that. So I'd say broadcast your gypsum. I think you're going to have, just by the gypsum part, you're going to have a lot better tissue sample next year just by putting the 1,500 pounds of gypsum out.
how often would you be doing that?
Oh, well, that's a good question.
Probably every year, when you think, for a couple of years.
Well, let's see here. Are you running any elemental sulfur too or not?
Well, I was using KTS.
Okay. So that's not going to be much to knock the mag out. You knock a little out with the KTS, but not what you're wanting. So whatever would be cheaper, the elemental sulfur or the gypsum. But the good thing with the gypsum is you get some more calcium out of it. So I don't know if I would go every year right off bat. Because you need to give a time for that stuff to be flushed out. I don't want you to knock a bunch of heavy metals out all at once. So I'd say maybe every other year to see what it does, and then keep running your sugar and humics that you're running. Because I mean, in season, I don't know of anything else that can really help. I mean, I think Monty's and Concept Ag are coming out with some, or have some stuff that'll help reduce the mag. But up till really this year or last year, the only stuff that we ever seen to do any good was humic acids. Then Joe and Craig may have to talk about a little bit on what each one of them guys got for the mag issue, guys. You guys want to talk about that a little bit? What you guys' product is to help on? Because we didn't want to make a sales pitch here on it, but we do know that guys are, a lot of our MACC guys do have mag issues. I would still, no matter what, even if you use one of their products, I would still hit it with that gypsum, and then come back with whatever products that they have to help reduce some more of that mag in season. When you guys want to talk?
Well, we're still in development, but we have learned over the last couple of years that we're switching more to the fulvic, like the Surge XD or fulvic in furrow. is an immediate help to, I don't know, sequester or block or something like that on the magnesium. But over time, if you've got high organic soils or high pHs, something like that, you'll get more results in the furrow or close to the furrow, to even maybe reducing the magnesium over time. I mean, it's just a culprit that takes time to bring it down. You saw where Poe took what, three years plus 4 years to start bringing his down with just humics and sugars. So it's just a relentless battle to keep trying to plug at that to bring that down. But I'll have more information in the future. Craig, you want to share what you got?
Sure, Joe. I agree with you. It's a battle, and we came out with a product that we're going back to the drawing board. It worked in certain soils, and certain soils it didn't. In the heavier soils, it was more of a challenge. I like what I saw with Poe with just the humics, and going possibly higher rates there. But what we're finding, we're going to tweak our product and probably put more of a soil penetrant in it, because we did see some really good results with a pentrometer on areas where we applied this, where we got much better penetration down to 2 feet, where before that penetrometer would peg out, you'd get down maybe 6 inches before it pegged out. So that's telling me we're opening up the soil profile, like Kevin talks about, putting more oxygen in there, getting better drainage out of it. So it's a combination of things. I think we're going to have something really good, but that magnesium, it's just a tough deal. Tiger 90, that elemental sulfur in conjunction with gypsum, possibly, with in addition to the humics right now is something that looks good, but we'll have more coming down.
Yeah, I've had a few guys tell me in the past that they've used AMS, dry AMS, and that seems to work for some of them. So it's pretty easy to get at most local places. So, some of you want to try the AMS, that give us a little bit more credibility about talking about it. Kevin,
Okay.
you're reading questions. You want to break for lunch, or what do you want to do?
Well, I think Cassidy can probably be on at 1 o'clock. So, or
Okay.
maybe, well, then she's going to text me when she's available.
Okay, it's 12:14 at mine, so we can go for lunch. And last Monday there, Kevin talked the whole time. I don't know if Sean's fixed him a big lunch or not, but it didn't look like he got anything to eat last Monday. So,
Saying
yeah.
I'm withering away.
Well,
Saying,
show your hair again. Oh goodness. So anyway, we'll break for half hour, 40 minutes, something like that. Like I said, any of you guys want to talk during lunch break, just feel free, and we'll see you here in a few minutes.